Welcome back to the Forging Alpha podcast, where we talk about fitness, motivation, mindset, nutrition, and kind of everything that goes along with that.
Leveling up, as they say.
Leveling up the game. And today, the first thing we're going to talk about is the election.
We might get canceled, and I love it. Good talking material.
So we missed it last week. We went on a camping trip, and we were going to film a podcast while we were on the camping trip, but for the second time, we did not quite get it done. We had some not so pleasant weather to be filming a podcast Saturday, and Sunday was almost too beautiful to film a podcast. But
Yep.
the next time we go, we'll get a podcast out.
We'll give it a little bit of a landscape change.
Yeah.
per
But
se.
back in the studio today.
Back in the studio, back in action.
Back
heading
in action.
into, honestly, almost the last month of the year, which is pretty crazy. We're almost at Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's wild. We're
We are.
trucking right along.
We are exactly halfway through November. And yeah, we are at that point where everybody's going to be throwing the safety net aside and drinking and boozing and eating.
Just
and
eating all the
partying
desserts and the pies and stuffing and all the good
honestly,
stuff.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you should enjoy it, but most people are enjoying it for a full 2 months straight, which, like we talked about last time, it'll get you.
It'll get you, and it's it sneaks in a little bit.
Yeah.
One Thanksgiving leads to a second, leads right into Christmas. Some work parties here and there. People are bringing desserts.
It's cold outside. You're probably not getting outside and doing your walks.
Nope.
Saw you at the gym this morning. You were doing your walk on
I
the
was
treadmill.
walking away on that thing, man.
Yeah.
Like a whole 10 minutes. Can you believe it?
Yeah, I started. Well, yeah, I can believe it. I'm proud of you, dude, for getting your cardio.
Thanks,
in.
man.
Yeah, you been doing that every workout?
No.
No.
Sometimes
Just-
it's like a couple minutes. If lately when I get there, the treadmills have been full. So then I don't walk on the treadmill to warm up. I just kind of hop into it. And I've been trying to hop on there before I leave as a little bit of a cool down. And yeah,
Very nice.
not
So-
super consistent though.
Well, it's better than not doing it at all. That's what I'd say.
Totally is.
The election. A couple
The
of weeks
election.
removed from it now. It's kind of old news. You got people happy. You got people extremely upset, crying about it. Ricky, what would you be doing if Donald Trump got elected versus if Kamala had gotten elected? Was your life
Yeah.
going to change? You going to
So,
wake up and do anything different day to day? You move into Costa Rica?
I would probably be shooting this podcast right now. And then around 5:30, I'm going to drive up north to my house. And I'm going to do some editing and stuff. And that's exactly what I would be doing either way, actually. What about you? Any crazy changes in your plans?
Zero.
Zero. Dang.
Zero. I've got my beliefs and my outlooks on things, and might have been getting another passport, maybe. If a certain situation would have happened. But my agenda and my mission in life didn't really change. At
No.
the end of the day, the focus of business trajectory, family trajectory, fitness, relationships was going to be the exact same regardless of the outcome.
You mean you did not expect somebody to come in and totally change your life for the better?
Unfortunately, I don't really think that's ever going to happen. I've yet to see it happen. I've yet to see it happen with anybody that I know who's been around and alive longer than I have. So if I was a betting man, which I am, I'd say no, wasn't planning on it. And I think a lot of people are.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how people think that presidential change is going to have this crazy big impact on their actual lives day to day.
Yeah,
And so far up to this point, not really the case.
exactly. And don't get me wrong, I think that voting as an American citizen is your duty. It's your right. People should do it. I think that elections are important. There are obviously things that it impacts. But when it comes down to what is really going to change. At the end of the day, I really think that opportunity is all you can really ask for. And a level playing field at the end of the day is really all you can ask for, because nobody's coming to give you a handout with anything. At the end of the day, risk, taking chances, and doing the work still have to happen. It's just maybe potentially what you are betting on and what you are voting for is a level playing field for that your outcome in the cards might be more in your favor, and that's about the best you can hope for with any election. And the thing is that, the beauty of the United States is there are checks and balances. The president only has so much power, and the direct impacts on your day-to-day life are probably going to be more seen by elections in your local areas, within your states, within your cities, which ends up making a bigger difference. So back in 2016, back in 2020, and today, my whole thing has always also been looking for opportunities, because at the end of the day, winners are going to be winners and losers are going to be losers. Regardless of outcomes, people are always going to find a way if they found a way before that and since they've been alive, and losers are always going to be losers and find excuses or something to cry about, right? When Biden got elected, like I like investing, I'm looking into the opportunities with that. Technology, oil, things like that. Trump getting in. I'm looking at crypto stuff right now, pretty heavily looking into that. And so like you can, regardless of what the outcome is, you only have so much impact, right? You can spend a lot of time crying, regardless of which side of the fence you're on, or celebrating. But at the end of the day, what can you control right now? Yeah. Now that things have been decided.
Yeah, the election's over. It's not going to change, presumably. So you have to focus on what you can actually do, the steps you can take towards whatever goal it is that you're going after, whether that's fitness, family, business, whatever it is. You're going to be taking the same steps that you were going to be taking if the election was reversed.
Exactly. And like we've talked about before, having a clear and concise vision for where you want to be going with things, relationship-wise, business-wise, fitness-wise, it doesn't change. The roadmaps might change. Maybe like if the apocalypse happens, the roadmap for how you're getting to that destination might be changing, but the course is not changing. The landing point is not changing. And so for me, things might be more challenging or less challenging, but like that goal and that vision just doesn't change, which I think is what a lot of people miss. It's like it's a 180 shift based on what things are happening. And we go back to that topic that we've discussed. Most people are just floating through life with no objective, not working towards any target. And when you don't have that, you get sucked into the drama. You get sucked into the smut of news media, of elections. Because honestly, once you put in your vote, the scope of what you can control is pretty much done from there.
Yeah, you took the one action you have.
Like after that point, it's kind of done. And it's time to, in my mind, what I did is, all right, moving on with my life. I didn't stay up and watch the election. I woke up, found out what was going on, proceeded about my life.
Yep.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about how people can, I guess, adopt that mentality of focusing on the controllables versus not. Has there been things that you have either struggled with and overcame with putting too much into the thoughts or actions of giving your attention away, giving your energy to those things you can't control, or have you always been pretty good about that?
I wouldn't necessarily say I've been always pretty good about that. There's definitely times where I'll get kind of stuck in a thought loop on some type of negative circumstance that I don't really have control over. And then I'll eventually catch myself and be like, well, that was a huge waste of time, huge waste of mental energy. And the biggest thing is just not having a victim mindhood, right? So controlling what you can actually control and not worrying about the things that you can't control, because it's not productive. Like, it's easy as a human to get stuck in that thought pattern. but you're not actually making any progress. And as soon as you start breaking things down into, hey, what's a step that I can actually take right now? It helps you kind of regain that control or that feeling of control for your life's outcome.
That's pretty good.
What about you?
That's very good. Yeah. I think that natural human tendency, I've met a few people, I think that were just born with a crazy positive attitude. You know, they just are great about having their glass half full mentality. But I think most human nature is directed towards that negative survival aspect we've discussed in the past. And it takes a lot of intention, focusing on the things that you can't control, and also being solution minded versus problem minded. But yeah, I think it's very easy to go slipping back into it. Most successful people that I know still struggle with it, but they bounce out of it quicker than I think a lot of people do. And I think that, you know, surrounding with yourself with a good environment that is conducive for that, but also, you know, man, I would say one of my strengths is that I don't consume typical news outlets, news medias. You know, I've got what I consider to be a few objective news sources that I follow on social media that just report boots on the ground versus a bias either way. But I just think that novelty and shock is what sells, and it's what brings people in and what keeps people watching the news. So you're probably not getting the whole truth on either side, and it's just not very conducive to me. Like, I'll eventually hear somebody talking about something if it's important, or I'll find it out from a objective reporting viewpoint, because I'm not watching Fox, I'm not watching CNN. I really don't consume that much, and I feel like, man, if you're letting that, especially around an election season, just consume
that's been
you,
running a lot of people's lives for the last 2 months.
Or the last 20 years. I feel like that's a little bit more of this generations ahead of us thing. People, you know, listen to NPR, watching the news in the evenings, newspaper. And then, you know, you hear one side of the story, and I'd say at least half of the time it ends up being either not true or it's not the entire truth. So
almost always it's out of context, at least with the political stuff, and for both sides. Mm-hmm. It's just stuff that's pulled out of context, and then it's just a bunch of people that are probably have the same position that you do, because that's the outlets that's showing up on your feed.
Exactly.
So then it's just an echo chamber of people saying the same stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy how much time people put into commenting and sharing things. And you'll look at some people's Facebook pages and it's just like all political stuff.
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, and I get voting based on, like, it's not just about, let's say, financial, business, life circumstances. Like, you are also voting for value-based systems. You're voting on the things that are important to you from a moralistic standpoint, or I'm not thinking of the word right now, but you get the train of thought that I'm going on. But outside of that, nobody's coming to save you. And every time I've gotten in that mode of meeting somebody or making a connection, I'm like, this is going to be it. Like, this is the person that's going to help me take to the next step. It's been beneficial at times, but it's never been somebody's saved me, or it's been a complete career changer for me. Like, literally every single year, every couple of months, like it's always kind of a grounding back of like, nobody's coming to save me. Like, I have to be the one creating opportunities and doing what's in my control. Like, it's just a reoccurring thing in my life that I'm consistently reminded of, you know, like you got to keep pushing forward and focusing on those things that are within your control, and also the things that, you know, if you're looking at this and you're looking at the election, and I would say a lot of people are struggling in some way, shape, or form, and hoping that somebody's going to come into office and then plop something into their lap that's going to completely change the direction and the course of that, versus doing the harder work of looking at, man, what am I not doing? Or what am I really shitty about? Or who am I not becoming to get to that circumstance, because yeah, it's I feel like most people know that, but there's always just this recurring circle every 4 years during election season that's going to happen. And if you look over the course of the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, there's been Democrats elected, there's been Republicans elected. And I would say for a lot of those people that are in that boat of waiting for somebody to change their life circumstances, their life was the exact same throughout all of those administrative changes. So when you look back at that and you're like, maybe I'm the issue here. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the problem's me.
Yeah, which is also good because the solution is also probably found there.
Almost always.
The things you're not obtaining right now is in the work you're not doing, which, you know, we all have that in some aspect. But it's a tough pill to swallow, but it's also the medicine you probably need. Let's talk a little bit about RFK.
Yeah. Speaking of medicine,
speaking about health, you know, because this kind of ties into a lot of the topics we talk about from, you know, a health perspective, from a nationalistic perspective. What's your opinion? What you've seen, what you've heard, what you've looked into with
So I haven't looked into very far because, again, I just don't pay that much attention to politics in general.
Yep.
However, from the little tweets and things pulled out of context that I have seen, it sounds like he wants to kind of shake up the food regulations, big pharma, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of countries that don't allow like some specific food dyes and other type of products to be in their foods.
Yeah.
But in the US, it's green light, good to go. So I am excited to see some effort put towards that.
Mm.
Is that the biggest thing that sticks out to you, or?
Biggest thing that sticks out to me, so I like him. I think the dude's what, 67, 66 and jacked, shredded to the bone. Couple things. One, I think that bringing back physical standards to school, bringing back PE and making that like.
Is that not a thing right now?
I don't believe it is.
Oh, wow.
I think that a lot of like recess and PE, especially like PE, like mandated PE has been taken out of schools.
Okay.
Like PE classes, physical standard tests or metrics for that. Because like back in the, you know, the 50s and the 60s, there used to be kind of certain standards that you'd have to pass when you were in high school. I think that that's one place that he can make a huge change, is just bringing back more activity, more emphasis on working out, on exercise within schools. Because, I mean, they've honestly shown that that's just as important as school materials in there. So I think that has the potential to make a big change, because if you look over the course of the past 50 years, and that's, I think, probably the biggest reason outside of we're just consuming way more hyper palatable food that's easily accessible, is that nobody's just moving as much anymore, right?
Yeah, we don't really need to. We've got cars that we're driving around in, nice climate controlled offices that we sit at a desk.
Yep. Less blue collar jobs, less manual labor jobs. And so bringing back a component of that, I think is going to be huge. Interested to see him open up some of the regulations when it comes to like the TRT. He's a big TRT guy. He is.
So is he trying to make it more accessible?
More accessible. He's trying to make the peptides less regulated. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, the BPCs, they were in a lot of these local clinics, and the FDA kind of cracked down on some of these peptide therapies. They were they are kind of gray area. You know, they're not FDA approved and such, but I think he's going to kind of cut down on the regulations and make those more accessible, so you can kind of have free reign with that, which will be interesting, because I do think that there is potential there versus a lot of the modern medicine routes and, you know, cortisone shots. I do think that some of these peptide therapies could be a future of medicine, you know, maybe not the entire pie, but a slice of the pie. I think I'm less excited about the like food regulation stuff. Mm-hmm. I, in my opinion, don't know how much of a difference some of those things are going to make. And here's my reasoning behind that. Like what he's looking at is like the dye example, right? regardless if you're taking food dyes out of Fruit Loops, out of breakfast cereals and Pop-Tarts, it's still going to be Fruit Loops and Pop-Tarts. It's still going to be a high fat, high sugar food.
So you're saying you're not really expecting that to solve like the obesity problem?
That's where I think a lot of people are looking at, like I see this all over social media where people are saying like, oh, like he's taking care of like the things that are poisoning our kids and, you know, they're going to solve this issue. In my mind, it's kind of stepping over dollar bills for pennies. You take out those food dyes from that, you're still going to have a fat kid. And people talk, you know, and then again, I'm not going to say for certain that those aren't causing any issues. But when we take a step back and look at like the root cause of certain things, why are we eating that much hyperpalatable processed foods to make a difference in general, right? If you were eating those things every once in a while, it's really not a cause for concern because the dosage is the poison. You take one too many Advil, ibuprofen, or drink too much water, you're going to die from that.
Right.
So the occasional treat for your kid, probably not going to be a big issue. And if you're doing that, occasionally giving your kid a treat, I don't see any substantial health outcomes being changed if that's a every once in a while occurrence and that having food dyes or not. I think that they could remove that and yeah, maybe it's going to be a little bit better. But what we need to be focusing on, in my opinion, and in a lot of, I would say the good scientists' opinions, is making healthy food more accessible to people, making it cheaper. Like the fact that you can't go buy 2 pounds of blueberries for less than the price of a 24-pack of Pop-Tarts is an issue.
Yeah. Right?
And then also changing people's relationships with that, because you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And that's the thing with, like, we're talking about Fruit Loops here. Like Fruit Loops are never going to be a health promoting food, right? And so at the end of the day, if we're still eating Fruit Loops at the level of that, you're still going to have less than stellar health outcomes. So, we need to look at how do we change people's relationships with food, because like people know that eating blueberries versus eating Fruit Loops is a smarter and healthier idea. The cost of it is a barrier to entry, I think, for a lot of people, right? Like buying eggs that are pasture raised or fresh produce, like for a lot of people, it's cheaper to go the processed food route. So I think that needs to be targeted. I would say first and foremost, if we want to tackle like the food dye things. But then again, man, it's like, and I'm not advocating for them, but I'm also like, I eat those things maybe once a month, a couple times a month. My daughter doesn't eat those things, right? She's 9 months old, she's soon to be 10, and she loves all food. People always talk about their picky kids, but I'm of the opinion that you're kind of dictating that in a lot of ways. We'll see what she's like when she's a year, 2, 3 years old. She might end up flipping a switch and making our lives a lot more hectic. But we feed her sardines, and she loves them. We feed her ground beef, steak, salmon, chicken. She loves it. Green beans, asparagus.
All of it.
Fruit. She eats it all. Every once in a while, like we'll go get donuts on a Sunday. Once or twice a month, we'll give her a little bite of that. She likes eating the ice cream. But I can literally see her reaction to that. Like once she tastes that, it's a completely different reaction for that. And go ahead. Do you have a question?
How so? Like what type of, is it more excited?
She's not like slugging down green beans, right? Like almost like fiending for it. Whenever we've got ice cream, like we grab an ice cream bar, whenever she gets a taste of that, you can see the reaction of something hyper palatable, sweet, salty, and fatty. It's designed to be like for you to crave it.
Yeah.
Like
they do a good job with it.
They do a great job of that. So that's where I think that, that's not going to change. Like you take the dyes out of a 1,000-calorie donut, still a 1,000-calorie donut. You know what I mean?
Just doesn't look as pretty.
It just doesn't look as pretty. So I think getting people away from eating as much of those foods is ultimately going to make a bigger change, I think. Because, when you're talking about like the position that he's going to be in, like you're talking about mass scale health implementations, right? If you're working with maybe a smaller sect, a community, a business where you can, maybe do some of those things, but we're talking about mass distributed things, companies, ingredients, and we're talking about millions of people across the United States. So in my opinion, like what is the hierarchy of things that we should be targeting if you're in his position? That's just my thing. Maybe focus on the food dyes once we've made things more accessible and we've made we've gotten around the mental holdups and the relationships that people have with food. Yeah. What's your opinion?
I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Like if there is stuff that's outlawed in other countries for good reason, then we probably shouldn't be eating it.
Yeah.
Chances are. And if it's an easier move than trying to like reframe people's mindset on food in general.
Yeah.
It's at least like something that he probably can put into place.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas obviously it'd be ideal if we could make whole foods and fresh fruits, vegetables, things like that a lot more accessible, but that's tough.
It is.
That's going to be tough.
It is. We'll find out. And on that topic, it's also a little bit untrue about like the whole European thing. With the food dyes, because you can actually, you can look all this stuff up. It a lot of time just goes by different names. So instead of calling it Red 50 or Blue 20, it goes by a different name. And so that's why
they don't have Red 40 there, but
it just goes by a different name within that. And then on the flip side of that, nobody's talking about the things in Europe that are legal. Like there are certain dyes that the FDA has outlawed here that we don't use. So it's kind of like there's a vice versa thing where they use things over there that we don't allow here, which nobody else is talking about. So man, we'll see. We'll see. I'm hoping especially that like the movement and the exercise creates a big enough wave with things. Because honestly, at the end of the day, like let's talk about the topic of like European people. There is a higher prevalence of people that smoke, drink over there than they do here, with a lot longer life expectancies. They move a lot more, they exercise a lot more. They've got better social relationships than I think here, and I feel like that overrides a lot of maybe the negative aspects of their life, right?
Yeah, putting the big positive blocks in there first before worrying about all the little stuff.
Yeah, so I think that maybe like that can probably override a lot of the detrimental effects. Just get people moving more, exercising more, even before maybe they're addressing the diet stuff. Like if you get people moving more and being active and metabolically active outside, that's probably going to help.
Why do you think European communities are more active? Because now it's like the technology is pretty much the same for the most part.
Yeah.
So do they just have different societal patterns, or what do you think keeps them moving around more than over here?
And that could be a whole podcast topic by itself, I think. Looking at Western culture versus even just Europeans, because a lot of people kind of scoff at the way that people in Spain live their life. I think it's at noon or 2 every single day, they take a siesta.
Yeah.
Like a 2-hour nap time period every single day, where people go to the beach, take a nap, they go swimming. So I think that there's a couple things at play there. I think that there's still some countries behind the A-ball when it comes to technology, accessibility for cars and stuff like that. Like I feel like in maybe like Italy and Spain, people walk and bike a lot more.
And their infrastructure is not really set up for that, I suppose.
Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot more of that. In Spain, they've got beaches that people are going to probably more frequently than maybe some of our like Midwestern states and some of the places that don't have access to as much water. I think that's one of the reasons, like in America, in the U.S., that people are probably a little bit healthier, like on the West Coast. There's a different level of health consciousness, but when you've got great weather, you're outside more, you're at the beach more, people are going to be healthier. And I think that's kind of something that takes care of itself when you just have better weather, beaches, people are swimming, walking on the beach and just doing that. So I think that's a component. I think the infrastructure is different. I feel like there's a lot more, I guess, traditionalism in the sense of like walking places, going on walks in the evening than we have here in place anymore. You can also look at like Asian cultures, like a lot of them go on walks after dinners, which is one of the reasons why they're one of the healthiest cultures. Like you look at Asian cultures that eat a 60% carbohydrate diet, like how do you figure that with them being one of the healthiest races when carbs are apparently that bad, right? And a lot of it has to do with their walking and moving around, especially post meal. But so I think that they just have it built into their traditions and their culture for just moving around, biking, walking a lot more. If you're going to see the sights, smells, you're going to be walking to those places a lot more than you're going to be renting a car and driving around inside of those cities.
So are you taking it a little bit more applicable to your situation right now? Are you building any of those habits as a young family to kind of make sure the kiddos grow up with that, or have you applied any of that?
That's a good question. We do a lot of walks. So a lot of our date nights, we'll get out. We'll go down to the walkway, Parkville in the river. We'll get out and we'll go walk. I usually in the evenings, like if my wife hasn't gotten up and worked out, I'll usually watch the baby so that she can go down and work out, so that we're kind of bouncing back and forth. I make sure that I'm giving her the time to go do that, and or I'm watching the baby. We do a lot of walks on the weekends together, and we try to get active in that way. I think especially once the baby's up and moving, that we'll be doing a lot more of that. I mean, camping, going outside. We do go to the parks quite a bit that we either walk to or that we drive to. And I mean, she sees us working out, like we'll take her down to the gym. Like she's around us when we're working out, like we'll take her down there and she'll, she's not walking, but she'll crawl up and she'll be playing with a kettlebell, or she'll be, right by the squat rack and like pulling herself up. We try to take her outside, and the daycare that she's at, they're super on top of that. So like Good. Taking them outside, like getting them involved with that. So yes, in terms of more of walking stuff, I would like to be a little bit more on top of it, maybe a little bit better about 5 p.m. every single day or right after dinner, non-negotiable walk, 10 minutes, and doing that literally every single day versus having it as sporadic as it is. But yeah, what about you guys? Do you guys do a lot walks together as a couple?
Yeah, we do quite a few walks. We've started, now that we're down to one dog at home, it's a little easier to take him with us on a walk. He walks a lot better than we recently put down a dog that did not walk very well. She was kind of a pain in the ass on walks, and we didn't want to leave her home alone and take him type situation. So we've gotten better about taking him on walks. Not real long, but probably about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a mandatory post-dinner walk, though.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely been times where we've had long days of work, and then we sit out on the couch to eat dinner and then watch something. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden we're falling asleep on the couch, and we didn't do much with our evening. So
100%.
Having a mandatory walk in place where you kind of get out, move around a little bit, your food's digesting a little better, and it kind of gives you some more energy. I think that's a fantastic idea.
I have a lot of conversations around walking with people, and just even finding those gaps for myself, because you can do it from anywhere. Anybody can do it, unless you're in a wheelchair or on crutches. Like I've started doing some of my calls online and stuff, just walking on the treadmill.
Yeah.
And I'll try to get 20 to 60 minutes in, just getting my steps in, walking. I'll take gaps. I've been going down to a lot more coffee shops, especially the one in Parkville. 90-minute block, go on a walk, come back, another 90-minute block, and just fitting in those almost microdoses of walking. So kind of circling it all back. I do think that, walking and biking, because there's not a lot of gyms in Europe.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Like not a lot of people are out there pumping iron. You've got maybe more of like your Austria and German people that do it, where there's a lot more like the Eastern Bloc countries that have the weightlifting side of things. But like a lot of the Mediterranean stuff is not a huge weightlifting or gym community. So And and circling back to the point of like nobody's coming to save you, that's also where I feel like the whole concept of food ingredients in a food that's like not less than stellar also is kind of displacing that responsibility
Totally.
a little
Like,
bit.
I want to be able to eat Fruit Loops, and now they're maybe slightly healthier, so I'm going to keep eating Fruit Loops.
Yeah.
Situation where if you really want to make a change for yourself, then
Eat
it's
some oatmeal,
not eating those foods.
eat some fruit, eat some meat, eat some eggs. Yeah, because I made a post about this yesterday that, relying on whether it's supplementation or now we've got this whole class within the fitness and the wellness space of like healthy treats, which some of them are good and some of them are helpful for getting into your macros, right? The protein bars, the protein supplements.
Yep.
But you've also got these things that have the macros of a Snickers bar or a cookie that have 10 grams of protein and they slap a protein label on it. And you got a lot of these people that are trying to rely on those still convenient options. And it's like going to the casino and trying to build long-term wealth, right? True health and unfortunately like nutrition is a lot of boring work, eating some things that you don't want to be eating for years on end, and being a little bit more outcome driven. Because a lot of people don't like really working. They like the outcome of making some money. Like a lot of people, you're probably going to have to eat a few things you don't necessarily like or that don't taste that great, but get to the point of it being outcome driven. How you feel, how you recover, how you perform, your energy levels, which is ultimately like the goal to work towards.
And a lot of the times it might not taste super awesome or you might not love it, but that's because you're used to the hyper palatable foods
yeah,
that you're shoving down your pie hole all day. So when you start eating some healthier things, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment. But I really feel like after a few weeks, your palate, I don't know if there's science behind it, but it feels like your palate kind of adjusts to that.
Yeah.
And then if you went and got some ice cream, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's way too sweet.
Maybe. I'm not at that point.
No, you're not?
No, I love ice cream.
It always tastes good.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, I'm not super stringent on either side of the fence, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm like completely eliminate Fruit Loops or let's just try to fit in as much of this stuff. And if it fits your macros and you can, fill the void with Oreos and cookies and cake. But if you look at most people that are really healthy, most people that are in the fitness community. So let's take bodybuilding, for example. None of the top bodybuilders that are still relatively healthy, in great shape, are relying on protein shakes for most of their needs. They're eating 5 to 8 meals of steak, chicken, turkey, and there's no shortcutting that process, right? If you're trying to be super healthy, feeding your kids cereal for breakfast is probably not going to lead to the best outcome overall. So there's always going to be a responsibility on you, even if it's not as convenient, to get some fruit for them, to get oatmeal, eggs, and put a little bit of effort into that. And that's where I think too that if some of those things are maybe a little bit more affordable, I don't know exactly if that's going to be a short-term thing. It's going to take some people have this grand idea that either party is going to come at office and automatically boom, housing prices, groceries are just going to drop half.
Well, they're just going to get in the computer and adjust the price, right?
Yeah, right. So it's going to take some time, but also going back to kind of what's important to you. I've always invested into spending a little bit more on food. I'd say that's one of my biggest monthly expenditures is on food. On grocery shopping and stuff, but it's just worth it to me because I like feeling good. I like eating a wide variety of foods, and that's just a good trade-off for me. And a lot of people would rather either not spend the money, like, oh, I'm going to put more money towards my 401k or whatever it is, and I'm going to buy Top Ramen and Pop-Tarts, or it's just not a high ranking for them when it comes to the things that they value, which is completely fine. But, when the outcome is not necessarily what you want it to be, it's the things you got to look at. Yeah. Because nobody's coming to feed your kid certain things. Nobody's going to help you eat a salad.
No, nobody's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. What else you got? Anything else election related?
Anything else election related? I'm excited to see. So we're going into New Year, which is already going to be a busy season. But I'm excited to see what business owners' responses are to it, because we actually did have quite a few people in the last few weeks that are kind of on the fence. They would say like, "Oh, we're kind of waiting to see how the election ends up before we decide what we're doing next year, marketing wise, as far as their budget's concerned and things like that." I'm excited to see what impact it has. This is our first. The company's only been around for a little over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time that we've operated in a Republican political party. So I am excited to see if there is a change on the business owner aspect and what their beliefs are.
I am too. I'm excited for the opportunity that's out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's about all you can ask for, right? Like, you still got to go out and make the sale. You still got to have an attractive offer. You still got to have a good product. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if more people are willing to spend money, that's all you can ask for. You still got to go out and find those people, though. Still got to go make sure that you're delivering on what you're offering at the end of the day.
100%.
That's and honestly, I'd rather have it that way. Like, I don't want somebody coming in and writing me another stimulus check, hoping that somebody's gonna come do that. Which, the welfare mentality, right?
Crazy.
Yeah. Or I'd rather sit around and kind of be reliant on some government things. And it's not everybody, but I'd say there's a lot of people, the systems that have been implemented over the past decade that were meant to be short-term solutions for people that needed the help, that you got a lot of leeches kind of milking the whole system.
Give me just a sec. Hey, this is Rick. I am doing well. How are you doing? Perfect. That works. Correct. Right on. We'll see you. That was a really important phone call. We're getting our custom water bottles delivered. But he's like an hour and 20 minutes out.
So are you being sarcastic, or was that an important phone call?
It was important. I just didn't know he was going to be that far out. He was giving me a nice, courteous heads up.
That's nice of him.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
We were talking about
opportunity, business heading into the new year.
Yeah, like, you still got to take the action. You still have to have a good product, good service, everything like that. Whoever's in office is just kind of one of those intangible variables that you don't have control over. So It's not what you should be focused on.
Exactly. And a great example of that I'll use.
What's that?
So most people would say the economy hasn't been great the last couple of years, right? And business has been going down. People have gone out of business. I have continued to increase gross revenue by about 50% for the last 2 years, which have supposedly not been good. So I'm excited for supposedly going into a better economic situation that'll happen. But, again, looking back on it, man, is like, if you just put your head down and do the work, you look for opportunities, you pivot to where you need to be, winners are going to win, losers are going to lose, because the losers are always focusing on the problem, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I have a kind of a wild prediction here. There are still going to be businesses going out of business in the next 4 years.
You think so?
I've got a feeling there's still going to be some businesses going under.
You mean nobody's coming to save them? Like, they still got to put in the work, and they got to do marketing and
all the things.
Look at where the marketplace is at and pivot and change and adapt.
Keep up with the times. Man. Have a good product, service, customer service. Wild.
Well, there you go.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first.
Nobody's coming to save you.
Because at the end of the day, people got wealthy and they were successful during the Great Depression.
Yep.
Right? Tough times don't last. Tough people do. And I think that's the thing, man, is like, really successful people, they're looking for opportunities regardless of the outcome, right? They're not on Twitter, Facebook, Threads, Instagram, complaining, bitching, moaning about the circumstances. You can be upset. You can be mad about certain things, but like when it's time to move on, like you want to keep on lingering with that. You want to keep on posting about that for weeks on end. I can almost guarantee I'd look at the rest of your life and it's probably a shit box in one way or the other, because you're focusing more on that versus getting your house in order. Would you say that I mean, that's another thing too, is like the people that are doing the most complaining have the most work to do within the personal circumstances, the things they can't control, right?
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to point that attention outwards towards something else than it is to look at the root of the problem, which is yourself. You know, it's easier to point the blame over here than it is to point the blame in the mirror at yourself.
Yep. You can't save the world if you can't save yourself.
You're exactly right. It's like put the oxygen mask on yourself before you try to help somebody else.
Exactly, man. Yeah. Whether that's, I mean, and it's something different for everybody. Could be your relationships in a dumpster fire. Could be your business stuff. Could be your fitness. It's kind of crazy that I see a lot of fat and out of shape people complaining about the election when the risk of you dying from metabolic disease is a lot bigger threat than anybody that just got into office.
Yes.
Hate to break it to you, but that's going to be a lot more impactful short-term control-wise than anybody that was elected or not elected into office.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, man. Tough pill to swallow. Necessary pill to swallow. Unless you just enjoy where you're at. Because it is easier just going on Facebook and complaining. Maybe we should do it. Maybe that's a solution.
Maybe it is.
More bitching on social media.
We need to start just complaining about everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And only have people with like-minded views, so it's just an echo chamber. That's the way to get stuff done.
See who has the biggest pity party they can throw?
Exactly. 100%, dude. Yeah.
I think that's about all I got.
That's about all I got, man. Election. Whether your person got in or out, what's your next move? What are you gonna do?
Still gotta take the step.
Nobody's coming to save you.
We will next week, though.
We will.
We're coming to save you next week on the Forging Alpha podcast.
And we'll see you then.
Peace.